To most species in the galactic concord, humans were no more real than ghosts' whispers of a long-dead race who once walked among the stars. They were the kind of bedtime tale passed down from elder to child, the type of myth teachers referenced when speaking of the old wars. Even the Central Archives listed humanity under unverified historical entities, along with other fables like world-eating machines and time-loop anomalies. But archivist Trell of the Zilari knew better. She was part of a dying caste, a group sworn to preserve truths that civilizations often tried to forget. Where the galaxy leaned on progress and politics, archivists studied the past, especially the forbidden parts. Trell's obsession was humanity. Not just the stories, but the little pieces of evidence buried beneath the official records. Battle reports with redacted entries, fleets that vanished without explanation, and star systems marked inaccessible for reasons no longer recorded. According to legend, humans were not just another race. They were an anomaly, a death-world species that didn't just survive against all odds but thrived because of them. The tales spoke of irrational bravery, emotional resilience, and a knack for chaos that terrified empires. But sometime during the last galactic cycle, the humans disappeared. No one knew why or how. Trell had spent over 2 decades searching. Everyone laughed at her. But finally, deep in the black vaults of Drexel 9, she uncovered a fragmented star chart, old, half-burned by plasma scorch, but unmistakably Terran in origin. It bore symbols she recognized from ancient human linguistic patterns, and it pointed to a sector long abandoned due to unstable stellar conditions. She knew what it meant. She took her findings to the High Concord Council. They waved her off. The Speaker of the Assembly even chuckled. "You found an old navigation error, not Atlantis." She wasn't deterred. Trell used her own credits to fund a journey. She hired smugglers, bounty ships, and curious rogue explorers who had nothing to lose. For 6 months, they chased fragments across dead systems, derelict way stations, and pirate-controlled zones. The crew grew weary. Some quit. Others mocked her openly. Then, in the cold silence near an unnamed dwarf star, the final coordinate string activated. And there it was. Sol. The system had been struck from all official maps. No probes, no stations, no registered warp lanes. It was as if someone had erased it. Earth itself appeared quiet, lush, spinning in slow blue and green. No orbital structures. No artificial satellites. No signals. "Empty," muttered the smuggler captain, a grizzled Avexian named Groll. "Nothing left but rocks and wind." They scanned the planet. No large cities. No open coms. No signs of advanced technology. The crew declared the myth debunked. Just another dead world. But Trell didn't agree. Her instruments detected something faint below the surface, deep beneath ocean trenches and mountain ranges. Massive energy signatures, carefully masked. Artificial, ancient, and dormant. Something was buried, watching. On the return trip, Trell prepared her full report. She encrypted it, coded it with her caste seal, and sent it through a priority beacon to the Concord Council. But it never arrived. One of the smugglers, a rodent-like scavenger named Fessick, had quietly copied her data while she slept. He sold the coordinates to a private Concord fleet officer looking to make a name for himself. Within days, a diplomatic escort of Concord vessels jumped to Sol to investigate the so-called discovery. By the time they reached Earth's orbit, Trell's warning still hadn't been read, and Earth was no longer silent. When the fleet emerged, they found something new. The space around Earth now had shape. Not satellites. Not debris. Ships. Not Concord. Not Tazine. Not any known galactic design. Smooth, angular, dark as obsidian, and utterly motionless. They did not respond to hails. They gave no warnings. They simply existed. The Concorde fleet paused, scanned, waited. And then their lead ships. Display lit up with a single word in perfect Concorde standard. The Concorde diplomatic fleet arrived at Sol System expecting a relic, a derelict planet, or at most, a dusty tomb. They came with cautious curiosity, 5 ships outfitted for long-range analysis and formal contact protocols, not battle. The mission was simple: investigate the truth of the Earth myth, document findings, and return with something impressive enough to win a political promotion. Admiral Drev, a stoic Varani tactician with little patience for superstition, was the commanding officer. He had scoffed when shown the coordinates. Even if they were real, he had said in the briefing, they are extinct. Nothing survives that long on a death world. But as the fleet emerged from slipspace, they were greeted not by silence, but as the fleet emerged from slipspace, by geometry. An enormous structure, a formation hung in space just above Earth's orbit. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of vessels, jet black, sleek, angular. They formed no defensive net, offered no ident tags, and responded to no hail. Each ship bore no markings, no signal lights, no emissions. Only stillness like statues of war carved. From night itself, initial analysis failed. The Concorde fleet systems couldn't lock onto any material signatures. Every scan came back unreadable, like the warships didn't exist in any traditional sense. Admiral Drev ordered a long-range ping. The fleet's long-range comms fired. Nothing. Then, abruptly, every ship's interface screen flickered. Lights dimmed for a heartbeat. Bridge officers gasped as their neural-linked command systems rebooted. Across every display on all 5 ships appeared the same word in bold white letters against black. Observed. Panic spread on the command decks. Secondary officers scrambled, demanding technical diagnostics. Drev maintained a composed facade, though his hands tightened on the armrests of his command chair. What do they want? His second asked. They want to intimidate us, Drev replied coldly. And they're doing a poor job of it. Moments later, a signal came in, not audio, not video. Just a tight band message in perfect Concorde standard, flawless down to the inflection markers. This is Terran Command. You have entered sovereign airspace. Leave now. Final warning. The bridge fell silent. The word Terran, it hadn't been used in over 400 years. Most in the galaxy didn't even recognize it anymore, but some of the older crew did. Their eyes widened. Admiral Drev sneered. They want to play ancient humans? Fine, let's see how far their play acting goes. He ordered the lead ship, the Valiant Spark, to fire a low-power plasma burst. A warning shot. Nothing lethal, just a statement. The weapon systems never responded. Instead, the ship's firing controls became unresponsive. Engineers below deck reported catastrophic software failure. Then navigation cut out. Then life support blinked offline. The ship didn't explode. It just vanished. One moment it was there, pulsing with shield energy and war paint. The next, it was gone. No debris, no warp signature, no escape pods. Just cold, empty space where it had floated. On every remaining ship, alarms blared. Hysterical voices overlapped on emergency comms. Ship's gone. That wasn't a weapon. They erased us. Get us out of here. Admiral Drev barked commands, but his orders were drowned in chaos. The Luminary, second in line, attempted to warp out, but its core collapsed into itself, folding silently in a bubble of distorted time and space. No explosion, no radiation. Just erasure. The remaining ships panicked. One attempted to fire. Another simply turned and fled. All vanished within 3 minutes. The Terran fleet didn't move. Not one ship. Not one weapon fired in the traditional sense. They had done nothing but speak and watch. Then, in the silence that followed, a new transmission rippled across the emergency channels. Not from the warships, but from deep space, from thousands of Terran satellites that had reactivated across the system. It was a whisper, calm and deliberate. Let the galaxy remember. We are awake. Back in Concord space, the disaster reports were fragmented. Sensor logs were scrambled. Half the AI data was unrecoverable, but word spread fast. Earth was not dead. Humans were not extinct. And the galaxy had touched something it didn't understand, not just warships. The annihilation of the Concord fleet at Sol was never officially acknowledged. No press release, no memorial. The Council hoped silence might bury the incident. That denial could keep the galactic order from spiraling into panic. But the galaxy had eyes, and it had ears. From fringe outposts to the cores of empire worlds, whispers spread like solar flares of warships made from shadow, of fleets that vanished without a trace, of a word not heard in generations. Terran. In the spiral, arms, smugglers, and traders spoke in hushed tones over cheap coms. They came from nowhere, killed without firing. Not a war in erasure. Refugees on distant stations claimed to have picked up encrypted bursts of human languages, old Earth dialects, long thought extinct. On the core worlds, the mood was grimmer. The Vuxari, famous for their biological warfare dominance, sealed their borders and recalled all exploratory vessels. The Tizim Collective, champions of AI sovereignty, suspended their digital expansion programs and locked their systems off from external probes. The Shalkar Imperium, a race descended from religious warriors, went one step further. They burned every archive, every scripture, every mention of humanity from their temples and historical vaults. To them, humans had crossed the line from myth into divine punishment. But the Concord Council, cornered and humiliated, took the most dangerous route of all. They began to prepare for war, secretly. They summoned military strategists, AI war simulators, and archaeologists. If humanity had returned with warships beyond comprehension, they needed answers and fast. But not all on the Council agreed. Archivist Trell, the Zilari who had rediscovered Earth, was now held under protective observation. She wasn't imprisoned, not officially, but her communications were restricted. Her research lab sealed. Yet Trell was no fool. She'd already guessed what the others hadn't. The humans didn't fire a single conventional shot at the fleet. No kinetic weapons, no plasma, no missiles. What they used was something else. A form of war that bypassed material resistance altogether, silent, invisible. Absolute. Not warfare. Control. One night, as she reviewed the scrambled sensor data again, her neural band buzzed. A private frequency activated one not tied to any. No network. She sat up, heart pounding. No voice. No visual. Just a message. You were right to search, but you are not ready. She stared at it for minutes, breath shallow. The message vanished as suddenly as it came. Her terminal showed no logs, no sender data, nothing. The very next day, everything changed. A Terran vessel entered Concord prime space. Not a warship this time. It was smaller, sleek, obsidian black like the others, but with a reflective hull that shimmered faintly in local starlight. The ship made no evasive maneuvers, responded to no warnings, but also took no aggressive action. It simply arrived. The Concord defense grid locked onto it. Protocols engaged. Command debated whether to destroy it outright, but the Terran vessel transmitted a simple docking request, clear, calm, with authentication protocols the Concord hadn't seen in over 400 years. Not only that, the codes worked. Despite the risk, They allowed it to land on orbital platform Seraph 1, the seat of the Concord High Council. The entire facility was placed under maximum alert. Dozens of armed security bots and elite soldiers waited at the key. Docking bay. The ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss. Out stepped a single human. Tall, calm, mid-40s in appearance. Dressed in matte black with no armor, no insignia, no weapons. His boots echoed in the steel hangar. He spoke only once to the security detail. "I come to speak, not to threaten." And they let him pass. Word of the humans' arrival spread through Concord Prime in seconds. Council members convened an emergency session. Media drones were disabled. Everything about this meeting would be off-record. The man introduced himself. Simply, Commander Elias Rourke. He offered no history, no explanation of how humanity had survived or why they had returned now. But his presence, his calm, his silence, carried more weight than a fleet dot because everyone in that room knew. When Commander Elias Rourke stood before the High Concord Council, every species present expected a demand that they anticipated fire, fury, ultimatums. Threats of war, of planetary sieges, of ancient vengeance. After all, that was the myth of humans, wasn't it? Brash, violent, always one word from war. But Rourke didn't arrive with rage. He arrived with clarity. The chamber was silent as he took his place. No guards flanked him, no documents in hand. Just a man calm, observant, walking into the heart of the most powerful coalition in the galaxy without fear. He looked across the tiers of alien diplomats, scaled, feathered, synthetic, chitinous, gaseous. 1,000 different forms of life, all staring down at the representative of a species they had long thought extinct or imaginary. He didn't bow. He didn't salute. He simply began to speak. "You remembered the stories," Rourke said, his voice amplified by the chamber's systems. "But not the lesson." A ripple of discomfort passed through the council tiers. Some leaned forward. Others whispered translations to aides. The silence was deep, not respectful, but uncertain. "We watched," he continued slowly, "as your empires rewrote history. You called us myths. You built a galaxy where power came from forgetting, not remembering. The Shalkar diplomat, a religious zealot named Iran Claros, his scales bristling with offense. And what is that lesson, human?" he snapped. "That Deathworlders are entitled to rule? That you should have remained our nightmare?" Rourke turned his gaze to him, calm, steady, terrifying in its lack of aggression. "The lesson," he replied evenly, "is that forgetting fire does not make it cold. It just makes you flammable." A hush swept the room. Then came Daxonvar, the Tar representative, a towering brute bred for war, genetically enhanced by his people to display dominance through presence alone. He stomped forward from his platform. "Then say what you came to say. Do you want our surrender?" Rourke didn't even blink. "No. Then what do you want?" He walked to the center of the chamber and stopped beneath the towering council sigil, 12 stars encircling a central light. The emblem of unity, of peace, of selective amnesia. "We came to remind you," Rourke said. "Legends aren't just stories, they're warnings." He gestured to the glowing seal above him. "This symbol stands for peace built on memory. But you let memory fade. You let fear die out. You convinced yourselves that danger was gone because you couldn't see it anymore." Then he stepped back. His voice hardened, not angry, but absolute. "So now we've returned. Not to rule, not to destroy, to watch." The council members looked to one another, stunned. Was that it? No annexation, no conquest? Was this really about memory? But some understood, not with their minds, but with their instincts. Ancient instincts. The kind that remembered why their ancestors had once feared Terrans. Not because of their weapons, Not because of their warships, because humans remembered everything, because humans were never done learning. Back in orbit, the Terran fleet stayed exactly where it was. Each warship drifted with the precision of a knife held just above the throat knot. Pressed, not swinging, just present. They made no further threats. They opened no comms, but they didn't leave either. And that silence screamed louder than anything the galaxy had heard in centuries. In the following days, the council met in private to assess what had happened. They didn't understand how to respond. They had prepared for a war. They had braced for nuclear rhetoric, for demands, for diplomacy at gunpoint, but instead they were given a mirror. They were forced to see the galaxy, not as they had built it, but as it had become, complacent, arrogant, curated to suit the most powerful species. And now, outside their polished windows, floated a fleet of legends, a people who had vanished not because they were defeated, but because they were disgusted. One by one, member species began to make small changes. The Tzeen opened their research logs to public review. The Shalkar reinstated forbiddens. Religious texts, those that warned of overreach. The Vuxari ended 3 covert experiments involving bioengineered slaves, and across dozens of systems, flags were lowered and new banners raised, not in fear of the Terrans, but in acknowledgement. Myths were alive, and they had come back not to punish, but to remind. In her private quarters, Trell watched the council footage again. Elias Rourke, standing silent beneath the light of 12 stars, and she understood. After Commander Elias Rourke delivered his message before the High Council, nothing seemed to change. No demands were made. No ultimatums issued. He gave no coordinates, no official alliances, no public declarations. But that illusion of calm was short-lived. Because while Rourke left as quietly as he arrived, the Terran fleet did not. Within days, Terran warships appeared over major galactic capitals, not attacking, not broadcasting, just waiting. Over Shalkar sanctuaries, Vuxari hive nodes, Tzeen AI sanctums, they positioned themselves like watchful guardians, or executioners. The message was clear without a single word. We see you. Most species, especially those with any sense of history, understood this for what it was, not an invasion, but a reminder that the galaxy's most feared myth had returned, and it had teeth. The High Concord tried desperately to manage the situation. Diplomatic backchannels were reopened. Emergency peace talks were held. But every attempt to communicate with the Terrans met the same cold silence until a single line of text appeared across the communicate with the Terrans met the same cold silence until a single line of text appeared across the tuna. Concord's secure diplomatic channel. When you forget the cost of fire, fire returns to teach you. And then the channel went dead. Meanwhile, within the halls of power, arguments fractured species alliances. Some called for preemptive strikes. Others wanted to submit. A few even suggested opening the archives and apologizing for the long-forgotten sins the humans clearly hadn't forgiven, but no one knew what humanity wanted. That was the most terrifying part. Only Trell had some insight. She had been brought secretly to the Terran ship Dawnkeeper, orbiting Earth under the direct watch of a vast defense lattice system. Unlike the other warships, Dawnkeeper wasn't just a weapon, it was also a library. Here, Trell saw history through Terran eyes. The truth was stunning. Humanity hadn't been wiped out or lost, they had left by choice. Hundreds of years ago, after wars too costly to measure and alliances too fragile to trust, Earth had initiated the Oblivion Accord, a self-imposed exile from galactic affairs. They erased their coordinates, destroyed every traceable signal, and receded into the shadows of uncharted space. Why? Because they saw what the galaxy was becoming, a hierarchy of stagnation, corruption, and comfortable cruelty. A place where species grew powerful by pretending others were beneath them. Humanity chose to vanish until the stars needed remembering. And now they were back. Trell asked Commander Rourke the question that weighed on everyone's minds. What do you want? From us? Rourke looked out the viewing window at Earth's atmosphere, aglow with orbiting ships and old satellites reawakening. We don't want territory, he said, or tribute, or revenge. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. We want the galaxy to stop lying to itself. She didn't understand at first, but then she saw the patterns. The Concorde had rewritten history. The Shell Car had purged documents showing failed invasions of Earth. The Voxari had harvested Terran genetics in secret for decades, then covered up the resulting mutations. Tazeen had tried to reverse engineer dormant human AI cores and lost half a moon to a recursive intelligence failure. Everyone had used humanity at some point. Everyone had buried what followed. And now the Terrans had returned, not to attack, but to correct. In the following cycles, subtle but powerful shifts reshaped the galaxy. The Terran fleet remained, a specter in orbit above key worlds, but never interfered unless provoked. Once, a rogue mining syndicate tried to hijack a Terran cargo vessel. It vanished. Its home base was then found hollowed out, its systems wiped clean. No one tried again. The Concorde collapsed, its outer militarized borders. Species once considered lesser found themselves protected quietly without announcement. On a border planet where a native population was being displaced for fuel extraction, a single Terran scout ship landed. Within hours, the corporation evacuated and the land was returned. The galaxy learned the new law fast. Legends didn't demand power. They simply were power. Trell eventually returned to Concorde space. She wasn't imprisoned. She was honored. But she knew better than anyone. This was no peace. This was a pause. The galaxy wasn't ruled by humans, but it was no longer allowed to ignore them either. And that was enough. Because now, when the younglings asked, did humans really exist? The elders would look to the sky, swallow their fear, and reply, they still do. And somewhere above, in the endless dark, a Terran warship would wait. Silent, patient.